Hey guys, tonight you open your eyes into darkness that isn't empty. It's velvet, slow, breathing. The kind of dark that feels alive. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Because tonight, time itself doesn't exist. You're drifting through the silence before creation, when there were no stars, no gods, no names, only a soft hum echoing across eternity. The air feels weightless, and every heartbeat sounds borrowed. In this place, there is no sky to separate above from below, no sea to divide reflection from truth. Only the still pulse of chaos, a vast, shapeless breath of potential. It stretches endlessly, shimmering like oil under invisible light. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the first thought forming, trembling, deciding whether to exist at all. The temperature is perfect, not cold, not warm, the kind that holds you instead of touches you. Here, even silence feels patient. And from that silence, everything begins. Tonight, you'll drift through the entire story of Greek mythology. From the moment chaos blinked itself into awareness to the thunder that crowned Zeus, king of the skies. You'll meet titans, monsters, and gods who fought not for survival, but for meaning. You'll feel the fire of creation, the salt of ancient seas, and the breath of Olympus itself. So settle in, close your eyes, and let the old stories remember themselves through you. Before light, before even the idea of shape, there was chaos. You don't see it, you feel it. It moves like mist through thought, not air. It hums softly, a low vibration without direction, color, or time. There's no temperature, only suggestion. This was existence before decision. That mattered because chaos wasn't emptiness, it was potential. You can almost imagine it stretching, yawning, preparing to become something, the way sleep turns into waking without noticing the moment it changes. From that stillness came separation, a faint tremor in the void, a shiver through eternity. The first distinction, above and below. In that instant, chaos birthed Erebus, the darkness that fills deep spaces, and Nyx, the goddess of night herself. Their forms shimmered, not bodies but ideas clothed in shadow, that mattered because before there were gods, there was the instinct to divide. You feel the first breath of duality, the beginning of everything choosing its opposite. Erebus drifted downward, heavy and slow, filling the cracks between thoughts. Nyx rose upward, a curtain drawn across the stars that didn't yet exist. Together they created rhythm, dusk and dawn, quiet and sound, known and unknown. The universe sighed in relief, as if it finally understood contrast. That mattered because contrast is what gives peace meaning. You can almost hear the echo of their creation in the space between your own breaths. Out of their union, other forces began to appear. Eros, the gentle pull that made things reach for one another, and Ether, the pure light that hovered above the world to come. These weren't deities yet. They were instructions written into the fabric of existence. That mattered because mythology begins where physics gets poetic. You can sense the air thickening, eager to carry warmth, and the weight of desire. Nyx, mother of darkness, wrapped herself in shadow and drifted silently, her black feathers scattering dreams wherever she passed. She was both beauty and warning, comforting but unreachable. The ancient Greeks would later say even Zeus feared her. That mattered because power often hides in quietness. You imagine her moving across the early universe like ink bleeding through water, gentle but irreversible. Erebus, her counterpart, was the stillness found in caves and deep seas. His presence wasn't evil, it was rest. When he exhaled, shadows filled the gaps between things, creating privacy for thought. That mattered because creation needs darkness as much as it needs light. You breathe slower now, realizing that without shadow, nothing would ever sleep. Together they formed the first lullaby, the harmony of dark and softer dark. Out of that quiet rhythm came a subtle vibration, as if the void itself began dreaming. From that dream rose Gaia, the earth, the first solid thought the cosmos ever had. That mattered because foundation always follows fatigue. You can almost feel the weight of her awakening beneath your feet. Gaia stretched slowly, green and gold, her surface trembling as she learned shape. Mountains rippled across her spine, rivers forming where she sighed. Her laughter became the wind. That mattered because even the world began as laughter misunderstood by gravity. You can picture her settling, letting her surface cool, proud of her own stillness. From Gaia's warmth came love for the sky she didn't yet have. She longed upward, aching for something to press against her vastness. That longing gave birth to Uranus, the heavens themselves. When he unfolded above her, the stars finally found their stage. That mattered because love invented architecture. You look up, and for a moment, you understand her relief. Chaos watched, satisfied. What once was singular had become relationship. Heaven met earth, night touched day, shadow danced with light. The universe stopped echoing, it started resonating. That mattered because harmony is older than music. You hear it faintly now in the pulse of the waves that never stop moving even when you do. The stars blinked into being, one by one, like eyes remembering how to open. Gaia and Uranus lay side by side, their children sleeping beneath them, waiting for stories. You can almost smell the iron of newborn earth, the sweetness of air that's never been breathed. That mattered because beginnings are best left unspoken, only felt. You let the image settle, calm and slow. And from the hum of chaos to the heartbeat of Gaia, the world gained texture. What was once a whisper now had surface, warmth, and memory. That mattered because life never begins loudly. It begins patiently. You exhale, feeling your pulse slow to the same rhythm as the first dawn. When the first morning arrived, it didn't blaze, it glowed. The light dripped across the edges of mountains like honey. Gaia's skin steamed where sunlight touched it, mist rising in soft columns from her valleys. You can almost smell stone heating for the first time. That mattered because warmth was the first comfort creation ever invented. You imagine her stretching again, pleased with her own endurance. Uranus arched above her, glittering with stars newly kindled. His voice was thunderless but deep, a vibration more than a sound. When he looked down at Gaia, his admiration was immediate, but so was his fear. She was vast, fertile, unpredictable. That mattered because admiration always contains a small dose of dread. You feel that tension ripple between them like the charge before lightning. Their union was inevitable. From sky meeting earth came the first storm, the first kiss, the first consequence. Mountains trembled with the sound of their embrace, and oceans formed in the hollows left behind. The Greeks later called it divine coupling, but it was simply gravity discovering intimacy. That mattered because attraction always precedes understanding. You hear rain fall somewhere in the distance, rhythm steady and ancient. From that union came children, many and powerful. The Titans first, beings vast as landscapes, embodiments of time, strength and endurance. Oceanus, who became the rivers, Hyperion, who carried the sun, and Cronus, who would one day carry rebellion. Each was carved from the raw materials of existence. That mattered because creation doesn't stop at satisfaction. It multiplies. You picture them forming, half light, half thunder, each with purpose carved into their gaze. Gaia adored them, her children of order and power. But Uranus feared them. He saw in them his own mortality, the possibility of replacement. In the myths, it's said he forced them deep within Gaia's body, burying them in her belly so the world would never hear their voices. That mattered because even gods mistake control for safety. You can almost hear the muffled cries echoing through the soil. Gaia's pain was constant, mountains shaking with her resentment, oceans swelling with grief. She loved her children, but couldn't free them without tearing herself apart. Night after night, she whispered plans into the wind, her anger cooling into patience. That mattered because nature's revenge is always slow. You can feel her waiting beneath your feet. One evening, she shaped a blade from stone and sky, flint sharper than thought itself. She called for her children in secret, offering the weapon to any brave enough to defy their father. Only Cronus stood. His voice was low, uncertain, but willing. That mattered because revolutions always begin in whispers. You can almost see the glint of the blade catching starlight. When Uranus descended again to cover Gaia, Cronus struck. The sound wasn't thunder, it was inevitability. Blood fell from the heavens, splattering across Gaia's skin, giving birth to new creatures, spirits, furies, and from the foam that reached the sea, a goddess named Aphrodite. That mattered because destruction has a habit of creating beauty by accident. You breathe slowly, feeling the air taste electric. The sky recoiled, retreating upward, forever separate from the earth. The first boundaries were drawn, the heavens above, the world below. Gaia sighed, heavy with relief and regret. That mattered because even freedom has side effects. You imagine her surface cooling again, bruised but unbroken. Cronus took his father's throne, proud but uneasy. Gaia watched him with knowing eyes, recognizing the same fear repeating itself. Power never satisfies, it only changes hands. That mattered because history began the moment hierarchy did. You lean back, realizing repetition is older than memory. Erebus, Nyx, Gaia, Uranus, all of them continued to hum, their stories bleeding into wind and tide. The universe was no longer an infant, it had learned ambition. That mattered because myth follows momentum. You listen as thunder murmurs faintly in the distance, less storm, more conversation. And somewhere far above, chaos still watches, amused, its job was done. The universe now had conflict, consequence, and continuity. That mattered because meaning can't exist without discomfort. You smile softly, realizing even gods needed tension to stay awake. The world grew quiet again after Uranus fell. The air thickened, golden with the calm that follows upheaval. Rivers found their rhythm, mountains their balance, and for the first time, time itself began to move forward. Cronus ruled over it, patient and deliberate, shaping hours and seasons like clay. You can almost smell the ripeness of early summer, taste the sweetness of rain that falls just right. That mattered because stability, for a moment, felt divine. This was the golden age when mortals hadn't yet been born, and the earth cared for itself. Trees bore fruit without labor, rivers never flooded, and nights were cool enough for peace, but never for fear. The stars, still new, blinked gently, like guardians too soft to be worshipped. That mattered because perfection always feels temporary. You can sense the world holding its breath, aware that quiet never lasts. Cronus moved through this age like a slow current, steady, thoughtful, and terrified. He carried his father's weapon, but not his father's courage. The prophecy haunted him. One of his own children would rise against him, just as he had against Uranus. That mattered because fear is hereditary. You imagine him pacing through his golden halls, trying to reason with inevitability. Gaia, still vast and motherly, bore him children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and finally Zeus. Each one radiated vitality, their laughter filling valleys, their eyes bright with curiosity. But Cronus could not bear the sound. The moment each child was born, he swallowed them whole. That mattered because tyranny always mistakes silence for safety. You can almost hear the muffled cries echoing from his chest. Rhea, his sister and wife, watched in horror as each infant vanished into his mouth. She tried pleading, reasoning, even begging Gaia for help. The earth, ever patient, whispered the old solution: deception. That mattered because wisdom in myth rarely shouts, it strategizes. You can imagine the air thickening with quiet defiance as Rhea planned her rebellion in secret. When her final child came, tiny, fierce, and fated, she hid him away. She wrapped a stone in cloth, placed it in Cronus's hands, and smiled through her grief. The Titan, blind with paranoia, devoured it without pause. The sound was dull, heavy, and final. That mattered because power thrives on illusion. You can feel her heartbeat slow as she realized the lie had worked. She carried her newborn, Zeus, across the sea to a hidden cave in Crete. The air there was cool and sweet with moss, the shadows protective, alive with whispers of nymphs. They cradled the infant while the Corette, warriors in bronze, danced above the cave, clashing their shields to hide his cries. That mattered because survival often requires noise disguised as chaos. You can hear the clang of protection in every echo. Zeus grew quickly, nourished by milk from Amalthea, a gentle goat who watched over him like an ancient secret. Her horns curved like crescents, her eyes calm, patient, knowing. When she died, Zeus fashioned her horn into the cornucopia, a vessel of endless abundance. That mattered because gratitude becomes myth when preserved through symbolism. You picture him lifting it, too young to understand legacy. Far above, Cronus slept soundly, unaware that the prophecy was already unfolding beneath his feet. The Titans continued their tranquil routines, tending to the stars, pushing the sun, turning the moon like a wheel. Time flowed unchallenged, each moment both eternal and doomed. That mattered because denial makes good architecture for tragedy. You breathe deeply, sensing the weight of inevitability building like pressure in stone. Rhea visited her son in secret whenever she could, leaving offerings of honey and gold. The cave became sacred, humming with maternal longing. Each time she left, Zeus would cry quietly, not from sadness, but impatience. He could feel destiny watching. That mattered, because even gods feel restless when fate takes too long. You imagine the air trembling with his future. Years passed. and the boy became thunder in waiting. His hands sparked when angry, his voice echoed when calm. The nymphs feared and adored him in equal measure. When he finally looked to the sky and said, "It's time," the cave itself seemed to nod. That mattered because readiness doesn't arrive, it ripens. You can smell the coming storm in the distance, metallic and sweet. And somewhere, Cronus stirred from his slumber, uneasy. He could not name it, but he could feel it, the tick of prophecy echoing from deep within him. The world shifted slightly, shadows gathering at the edges of gold. That mattered because paradise, in myth, is never permanent. You hear the soft crackle of thunder forming from curiosity into rebellion. Zeus climbed from the cave with the confidence of lightning disguised as flesh. His steps left small burns on stone, his breath steaming the cool morning air. The island was waking, birds calling, waves breaking softly against rock. He looked toward the horizon and whispered his first word, "Father." That mattered because defiance begins in acknowledgement. You can almost feel the warmth behind the calm, the storm rehearsing restraint. Guided by Gaia's unseen hand, he sought out Metis, the goddess of cunning. She taught him the art of patience, how to wait for strength to mean something. Her voice was soft, steady, full of secrets disguised as lullabies. That mattered because wisdom often sounds like kindness. You imagine her tracing constellations in the dirt, teaching a god how to think before striking. Zeus returned to his father's halls in disguise, a cupbearer cloaked in shadow. The Titan's laughter filled the air, deep and careless. Cronus, older now, lounged in comfort, his golden throne surrounded by the echoes of swallowed voices. The hall smelled of cedar and dust, sweet with decay. That mattered because decay wears perfume when it's royal. You can almost hear Zeus steadying his breath, pretending obedience. He served his father wine, laced with a potion Metis had whispered into being. The liquid shimmered like molten glass, invisible beneath the surface. Cronus drank deeply, sighing in weary satisfaction. The effect came slowly, a ripple through eternity, a convulsion through order. That mattered because justice, when divine, always chooses theatrical timing. You hold your breath as the Titan begins to cough. One by one, his swallowed children return to the world. First Hestia, then Demeter, Hera, Hades and Poseidon, grown, luminous and furious. They fell to the floor gasping, their skin glowing like dawn after endless night. Cronus staggered, helpless, the wine dripping from his lips like guilt. That mattered because liberation often looks like chaos to those unprepared for it. You feel the air splitting between fury and freedom. The siblings gathered, still trembling from rebirth. Zeus stood at their center, calm as the eye of a storm. His brothers and sisters bowed instinctively, recognizing authority disguised as grace. That mattered because power feels most natural when no one questions its presence. You can sense the air solidify, the first sparks of Olympus igniting. Cronus roared, voice shaking the heavens, summoning his brothers, the Titans, to arms. Mountains cracked, seas recoiled, the stars blinked in confusion, the sky grew red as iron, the earth black as memory. This was war not of mortals, but of principles. That mattered because rebellion becomes mythology when scale replaces logic. You hear the first clash, a sound like thunder remembering its purpose. For 10 years, the battle raged. Zeus hurled lightning forged from storms yet unborn, while the Titans tore mountains from the earth to use as shields. Rivers reversed, time stuttered, and even chaos blinked to watch. That mattered because eternity pauses for spectacle. You picture the world trembling, caught between generations of gods. Gaia, weary but proud, aided her grandsons. She released the Hecatonchires, giants with 100 hands, and the Cyclopes, one-eyed smiths who forged Zeus's thunderbolts. The air burned white with power, light overwhelming sound. That mattered because innovation always hides inside desperation. You can smell ozone, taste fear, and feel inevitability blooming. Finally, Cronus fell, struck by lightning that split sky and sea alike. His body crumbled into shadow, sinking into Tartarus, the deepest abyss of earth. Zeus stood victorious, his siblings at his side, each radiant with new dominion. That mattered because hierarchy, once broken, always rebuilds itself under new branding. You smile faintly at the symmetry. The Titans were cast down, imprisoned beneath layers of stone and time. The air above cleared, blue for the first time since memory began. The war was over, but the world was still young. That mattered because peace feels awkward after triumph. You can almost hear the hesitant quiet following applause. And so the heavens were divided, Zeus ruling sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. They looked upon their realms with the exhaustion of creators who had inherited consequence. That mattered because victory is just the beginning of maintenance. You breathe deeply, sensing the balance settle, fragile and glorious. The world after war felt oddly new. The air smelled of wet stone and rebirth, thunder fading into memory. Rivers found their paths again, and forests whispered back to life. The gods, newly crowned, stood on mountaintops and watched the earth breathe. Zeus ruled from above, his throne carved from cloud and conviction. The sun rose brighter now, the wind gentler. That mattered because even destruction can create balance. You imagine the calm after a storm, realizing it's part of the same symphony. Among the divine architects, one worked differently. Prometheus, the Titan who had switched sides. His hands were not for conquest, but for crafting. He walked the earth quietly, shaping rivers with his fingertips, smoothing stones into thought. When he spoke, mountains listened. That mattered because wisdom prefers creation over noise. You picture him moving slowly through soft soil, curiosity his only religion. Prometheus looked upon the empty fields and felt pity. The animals were strong, the gods eternal, but the earth itself seemed lonely. So he knelt and molded clay, pressing breath into it with gentle care. The air thickened, warm and trembling, as the first humans opened their eyes. That mattered because empathy invents life faster than power does. You can almost feel the cool weight of that first exhale. Humans, though beautiful, were fragile, naked, cold, shivering beneath indifferent stars. Prometheus watched them stumble through rain and darkness, huddled together in confusion. The gods above laughed, amused at their weakness. But he didn't. He saw potential where they saw entertainment. That mattered because compassion always notices what pride ignores. You imagine him sighing softly, torn between loyalty and kindness. One night he climbed Mount Olympus in silence, stealing fire from the god's hearth. The flames licked at his fingers but didn't harm him. They seemed to understand. He carried it down, wrapped in fennel stalks, glowing softly like a secret. When he gave it to humanity, the night gasped, the world flickered orange for the first time. That mattered because knowledge always arrives disguised as warmth. You can feel its heat even now, eternal and defiant. The humans rejoiced, cooking, forging, surviving. They built light into civilization and gratitude into myth. Their fires rose in columns, visible even from Olympus. The gods watched in awe, some impressed, others uneasy. That mattered because imitation threatens the original. You can almost hear Zeus's distant thunder, a murmur of suspicion disguised as weather. When Zeus learned what had happened, his anger was colder than flame. He summoned Prometheus, his voice echoing through mountains, demanding explanation. The Titan stood calmly, his hands still smelling faintly of smoke. They needed warmth, he said simply. Zeus answered, they needed obedience. That mattered because benevolence and arrogance often share vocabulary. You feel the air tighten, heavy with consequence. Prometheus was punished. Chained to a rock on Mount Caucasus, he faced the open sky, eternal and indifferent. Each day an eagle tore at his liver, and each night it regrew. The wind carried his silence across continents. That mattered because endurance outlives rebellion. You can hear the faint flapping of wings if you listen long enough. Yet, in his pain, Prometheus smiled. Humanity thrived below, building homes, learning art, naming stars. Every fire was a monument to his defiance. That mattered because legacy doesn't require freedom, only memory. You picture the glow of hearths flickering like a constellation of gratitude. Zeus watched for centuries, his rage cooling into curiosity. He began to understand the gift, how the flicker of fire mirrored the pulse of will. The gods might rule from afar, but humans had learned something new, independence. That mattered because divinity dilutes when shared. You can sense Olympus adjusting its pride. Even chained, Prometheus became a symbol. His suffering folded into the rhythm of progress. Mortals told his story around the very fires he gave them. His name became synonymous with the risk of loving too deeply. That mattered because compassion always leaves scars worth keeping. You imagine the Titan still smiling through eternity's long afternoon. And below, humanity continued to grow, each spark echoing the first flame. The gift was never about fire, it was about permission. That mattered because once awareness ignites, it refuses to extinguish. You breathe in, feeling that ancient warmth still burning quietly in every living thing. The storms quieted long enough for light to build cities in the clouds. High above the mortal world, Mount Olympus rose, its peaks hidden in vapor, its foundations rooted in eternity. You can almost see it now, shimmering white and gold, the air there thin and humming. The scent of honey and stone mingled softly in the breeze. That mattered because beauty feels sacred when elevated. You imagine each gust carrying laughter instead of sound. The 12 Olympians gathered, each born from chaos but refined by consequence. Zeus, broad-shouldered and restless, ruled the sky. Hera, proud and radiant, governed loyalty and vengeance in equal measure. Poseidon claimed the sea's mood swings. Demeter coaxed life from soil. Hestia tended the fire, Hermes the words, and Athena the reason behind both. That mattered because balance requires personality. You can almost hear their arguments echo like thunder, rehearsing philosophy. Apollo's lyre sang through halls of marble, while Artemis walked silently along moonlit terraces. Ares sharpened blades no one wanted to admit they needed. and Aphrodite moved between them all like perfume. Each god represented a truth humans already suspected about themselves. That mattered because divinity is just psychology with better storytelling. You breathe slower, imagining Olympus as both mirror and myth. Their palaces were not built of stone but of meaning, walls formed by oath, columns carved from light. The floors shimmered with patterns of stars, constellations frozen mid-thought. The air tasted faintly sweet, as though fruit and lightning shared the same recipe. That mattered because even paradise requires texture. You can almost feel marble warm beneath your bare feet. Zeus ruled with conviction, though not without flaw. His temper flashed like summer storms, sudden and beautiful. Hera's jealousy sparked quieter fires, slow-burning and deliberate. Between them, Olympus thrived, a realm of endless banquets and eternal politics. That mattered because eternity still demands entertainment. You imagine the gods dining, their laughter rumbling faintly across mortal skies. Below, mortals began naming everything they saw. Mountains for titans, rivers for muses, stars for forgotten heroes. Each word was a rope tying earth to heaven. That mattered because stories are the first bridges civilization builds. You picture them gazing upward, whispering names into wind and prayer. Hermes carried messages between worlds, his sandals whispering faster than light. He was the thread stitching heaven to earth, laughter to mourning. When he flew, even time hesitated to count. That mattered because movement itself became divine. You feel the air shift slightly, playful, as if he's passing by now. Athena, born from Zeus's head, walked with wisdom calm enough to silence thunder. She taught humans strategy, art, and restraint, gifts often ignored but never wasted. Her presence smelled faintly of olive leaves and ink. That mattered because intelligence leaves softer footprints than power. You imagine her smiling faintly at human stubbornness. Poseidon ruled from beneath, his trident shaping waves into emotion. The sea was his reflection, beautiful, unpredictable, jealous of boundaries. When mortals built ships, he admired their audacity, then tested it. That mattered because admiration from gods often arrives disguised as challenge. You can hear his laughter roll through distant surf. Demeter watched crops grow like prayers answered by sunlight. Her joy was quiet but contagious. She reminded mortals that sustenance was sacred, not mundane. That mattered because gratitude once grew faster than wheat. You imagine her brushing earth from her hands, satisfied with patience itself. Even Hades, the silent one, ruled with dignity below, his kingdom less punishment than necessity. The souls there rested like leaves underwater, swaying with eternal rhythm. That mattered because death, to the Greeks, was order, not cruelty. You breathe slow, picturing his halls lit by embers that never burned out, and from Olympus to Tartarus, harmony finally held, for a while. The gods laughed, mortals dreamed, and the universe hummed its first lullaby. That mattered because balance is never permanent, it only visits. You close your eyes, the faint scent of ozone and nectar lingering in the air, as the curtain of Act Weir falls quietly around you. The morning smelled of clay and anticipation. The gods had gathered in a circle, sunlight dripping down marble like honey. Hephaestus, god of fire, worked in silence, his hammer ringing softly, metal against meaning. From the earth he shaped her, smooth skin, gentle curves, eyes that shimmered with something unfinished. That mattered because perfection without purpose is dangerous. You can almost hear her first breath, light and untested, like a question whispered to the wind. They named her Pandora, all gifted. Each god offered a blessing. Athena gave her reason, Aphrodite gave beauty, Hermes gave charm, and Hera gave curiosity. Together they wrapped contradiction in grace. She smiled, not knowing she was built for irony. That mattered because curiosity is creation's favorite trick. You imagine the gods watching her, proud and uneasy, as though admiring a storm they disguised as sculpture. Prometheus had given fire to humans, and Zeus wanted balance or punishment, so Pandora was sent as a gift to Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother. The box she carried was sealed with divine wax, tied with ribbons of gold. "Do not open it," Zeus said, voice casual, eyes sharp. That mattered because forbidden things are the universe's best marketing strategy. You picture her tracing the lid with trembling fingers, already imagining sound inside. The days passed sweetly. Pandora walked among flowers, learning color by touching it. Epimetheus adored her, his laughter mixing with hers like sunlight through leaves. But the box glowed faintly in the corner of their home, humming in sleep. That mattered because temptation never shouts, it hums. You can almost hear its rhythm aligning with her heartbeat. She lasted longer than anyone expected. Until one night, the wind whispered through the window, like a secret, too confident. She lit a small fire, its glow gold against her skin, and stared at the box. Just a glance, she told herself, though curiosity never obeys fractions. That mattered because promises dissolve in warm light. You feel her hesitation tighten the air around you. The seal broke with a sigh, not a crack. From within poured shadows, soft at first, then frantic. They swirled around her, shrieking, invisible shapes made of hunger, envy, sorrow, and disease. The air turned cold, her breath shallow. Epimetheus rushed in, shouting her name, but it was too late. That mattered because regret always arrives on time. You hear the echoes of chaos fill the house like smoke. The world changed overnight. Where laughter had lived, pain took its place. Hunger bit deeper, love grew uncertain, and death learned permanence. Pandora fell to her knees, clutching the box, tears blurring her vision. "What have I done?" she whispered, though the gods already knew the answer. That mattered because guilt is the first true prayer. You can almost feel her heart breaking through history. But then, silence. From the box's depths came a faint glow, softer than moonlight. A voice, quiet and trembling, called out, "Let me out too." Hope. She hesitated, then lifted the lid once more. The light drifted gently, warm and forgiving, spreading through the ruins of despair. That mattered because balance always hides in aftermath. You exhale slowly, matching the calm that follows crying. Hope wrapped itself around her, whispering apologies for being late. It kissed her forehead, promising to stay where pain settled deepest. Humanity would never again be whole, but it would never again be hopeless either. That mattered because salvation only matters when brokenness does. You imagine that faint shimmer still hovering inside every heart. Epimetheus held Pandora close, not blaming her. "You gave them choice," he said softly. "Now they are gods in their own small ways." She smiled weakly, though her eyes still carried storms. That mattered because forgiveness always arrives with a limp. You can almost taste the salt of her tears, ancient and holy. Far above, Zeus watched, unreadable. His plan had worked, though even he felt something shift. Chaos had returned, not as void, but as consequence. He turned away, unwilling to admit that empathy had slipped back into the world through hope's quiet doorway. That mattered because control is the only illusion gods never outgrow. You hear thunder rolling, not in anger, but in contemplation. Pandora lived the rest of her days gently, tending flowers and listening to the wind. When she died, it said the gods buried her box deep beneath the sea. Yet the hum remains, faint and rhythmic, inside every choice humanity still makes. That mattered because myth is just memory too stubborn to fade. You close your eyes, hearing the lid close again, softly, forever almost. The air around the temple was cool and heavy with salt. You can smell sea spray clinging to marble, the faint hum of waves echoing through stone. Inside, torches flickered, their light painting gold across Athena's statue. Among the acolytes knelt Medusa, beautiful, proud, unaware she'd been born into a world allergic to her power. That mattered because beauty becomes dangerous when it stops apologizing. You can almost hear the soft scrape of her brush through her hair. She had once been human, a priestess devoted entirely to purity. But Poseidon saw her in the temple one night, his gaze heavy, his hunger older than morality. When he approached her, the ocean itself seemed to hold its breath. The story ends with silence and shame. That mattered because myth was how Greeks explained the crimes they didn't want to name. You feel the air grow colder, dense with injustice. Athena found her afterward, trembling before the altar. The goddess's rage was quiet, controlled, terrifying. But it wasn't directed at Poseidon, it was redirected toward the victim. "You desecrated my temple," she said. And with a single breath, she cursed Medusa's beauty into terror. That mattered because vengeance often misfires. You can see the reflection of betrayal in Athena's metallic eyes. Medusa's hair twisted and hissed, serpents replacing strands. Her skin cooled to marble's touch, her gaze now fatal. Every mirror feared her. Every man hunted her. Alone, she fled to the farthest edge of the earth, where cliffs bled into sea foam. That mattered because exile is punishment disguised as preservation. You can hear the ocean roaring beneath her grief. For years, she lived in solitude. Birds avoided her, rivers changed course. Yet she found peace in isolation, the way one does after surrender. Her cave filled with statues of those who came to kill her, each frozen mid-strike. That mattered because fear immortalizes arrogance. You imagine her walking among them, calm, almost forgiving. She wasn't a monster by choice. She was simply a reflection too honest for the world to bear. Those who looked upon her didn't die, they faced themselves, unfiltered. The stone came from their own fear. That mattered because truth petrifies before it liberates. You feel the faint sting of recognition behind your eyelids. When Perseus came, guided by Athena herself, he didn't dare meet her gaze. He carried a polished shield, its surface gleaming like a second moon. As he crept closer, she slept, her breath slow, serpents coiled like sighs. That mattered because tragedy prefers irony. You can almost hear the silence before the blade falls. He swung swiftly. The sound was soft, almost tender. Blood pooled black, thick as ink, staining the floor. From it rose Pegasus, the winged horse, born from her death, proof that beauty can re-emerge from cruelty. That mattered because even endings give birth. You see feathers shimmer faintly in moonlight. Perseus carried her head away, eyes still glowing faintly, even in death. He used it as weapon, turning monsters to stone, men to regret. Athena eventually claimed it, mounting it on her shield, a trophy or an apology, no one knows. That mattered because ownership is history's favorite disguise for guilt. You can almost feel Medusa's quiet forgiveness lingering beneath the bronze. The world moved on, but her story didn't fade. Artists painted her as rage, poets as victim, and philosophers as metaphor. Yet beneath all retellings, one truth endured. She was never evil, only inconvenient. That mattered because myth often mirrors fear of female power. You feel her silence stretching across centuries, patient and alive. In some versions, her eyes still blink in the dark, watching over women who've learned not to look away. The snakes hiss softly, not in threat, but in solidarity. That mattered because reclamation hums louder than revenge. You can almost hear them whisper, "You are not cursed, you are remembered." And somewhere, Athena still wears that shield, unaware that forgiveness glows brighter than punishment. That mattered because power without empathy is just petrified pride. You exhale softly, hearing the last whisper of scales fade into calm. The forest was silent, the kind of silence that listens. You can hear leaves shifting gently, the hush before melody. Orpheus stood beneath a tree older than memory, his lyre resting against his heart. When he strummed it, the air changed texture. The sound wasn't heard, it was felt, a tremor that turned even shadows soft. That mattered because beauty always begins as vibration. You imagine the forest holding its breath, unwilling to interrupt genius. Eurydice listened from a meadow nearby, her laughter blending with the rhythm of bees and water. The two of them were young, their love unpolished but effortless. She danced barefoot through sunlight while Orpheus played, their joy echoing through the world like a rumor the gods envied. That mattered because happiness never knows. It's historic while it's happening. You can almost see the golden dust swirling around their ankles. Then came the snake, silent, small, efficient. Eurydice's scream shattered the melody. Her body fell into grass that no longer smelled sweet. The forest froze mid-breath. Orpheus dropped his lyre, the strings snapping with grief. That mattered because sound always breaks before silence does. You feel his hands tremble, searching for warmth, already leaving. He mourned for days, then weeks, then decided mourning wasn't enough. He descended into the underworld, carrying nothing but music. The gates of Hades opened not from force, but from curiosity. His notes floated through the dark like light pretending to be brave. That mattered because beauty negotiates better than violence. You hear the faint echo of strings bending time. The shades stopped weeping to listen. Even Cerberus, the three-headed guardian, whimpered softly and lay down to rest. Orpheus walked through them like a priest through memory, each chord a confession. That mattered because grief sounds most divine when it asks for permission. You can almost see his fingers bleeding against the strings. At last, he reached Hades and Persephone. "Let her go," he said simply. The queen's eyes glimmered, softened by nostalgia she didn't know she had. Hades hesitated, but eternity has a weak spot for devotion. They agreed, but with one condition. He must not look back until they reached the light above. That mattered because love always fails the test of patience. You feel your chest tighten, already knowing how this ends. He walked, step by step, his heartbeat syncing with hers behind him. The path wound upward, dark and endless. Every echo sounded like temptation. The closer they came to daylight, the stronger the doubt grew. He couldn't hear her breathing anymore. That mattered because faith feels most fragile right before fulfillment. You can hear his footsteps quicken against the stone. He turned, just once, just enough. Her eyes met his, tender, terrified, forgiving, and then she was gone, pulled backward like smoke into shadow. The air froze around him, his lyre fell, the strings crying one last note that broke itself into silence. That mattered because tragedy completes what love begins. You feel your throat tighten, mourning with him. Orpheus returned to the surface alone, walking through sunlight that felt heavier now. He sang no more for joy, only memory. His music softened storms, calmed beasts, and made rivers pause out of respect. That mattered because art, once wounded, becomes universal. You imagine the world itself humming in sympathy. He never remarried. When he died, some say torn by jealous followers, his head floated down a river, still singing. The water carried his melody to the sea, where it blended with eternity's background noise. That mattered because devotion doesn't end with form. You can almost hear it beneath the sound of waves now. In the underworld, Persephone granted them reunion. Orpheus and Eurydice finally walked side by side, their steps unmeasured by time, no conditions, no glances, no fear, just continuity. That mattered because endings are merely pauses misinterpreted by mortals. You exhale softly, letting the story dissolve like music at dusk. And somewhere, between silence and sound, Orpheus still plays, his song folding over centuries like a blanket. That mattered because grief, when sung beautifully, never fully dies. It just changes key. You feel it linger in your chest long after the strings stop. The island smelled of salt and invention. The sea crashed against cliffs while inside a dim workshop. Daedalus shaped dreams out of wood and wax. His hands moved quickly but precisely. He was a craftsman cursed with perfectionism. Beside him stood his son, Icarus, young, impatient, full of sunlight. That mattered because brilliance rarely inherits caution. You can almost hear their laughter mixing with the creak of waves below. Daedalus had built the labyrinth for King Minos, an impossible maze to contain the Minotaur. But when the king turned on him, the inventor and his son were imprisoned in their own creation. For months they watched the sky through cracks in the ceiling, the air tasting of dust and regret. That mattered because genius often becomes its own cage. You imagine their shadows stretching long across stone. One morning, Daedalus gathered feathers and melted wax, crafting wings strong enough to carry dreams. He attached them to his son's shoulders, warning, "Don't fly too high, the sun will melt the wax. Don't fly too low, the sea will swallow you." Icarus nodded, half listening, already staring at the horizon. That mattered because advice always sounds smaller than freedom. You can smell the faint sweetness of melting beeswax. They leapt into the air, wings catching wind with effortless grace. For the first time, the world bowed beneath them, villages shrinking, clouds close enough to touch. Icarus shouted, laughing, his voice echoing across blue infinity. Daedalus called after him, "Stay near me." But the wind carried both warning and pride away. That mattered because joy is louder than wisdom. You feel the sun warming your face. Higher and higher, Icarus soared. The wax glistened, beginning to sweat under sunlight. Birds flew beside him, confused but admiring. Below, the ocean mirrored his brilliance, sky and sea trading places. That mattered because ecstasy blurs direction. You can almost see his reflection smiling back, unaware it's farewell. The heat grew unbearable, the wings softened, feathers loosening like sighs. For a brief moment, Icarus felt infinite, suspended between triumph and collapse. Then the wax gave way. His laughter broke into a scream that never finished. That mattered because mortality always interrupts euphoria. You hear the air rushing past him in endless descent. Daedalus watched helplessly, his cries carried away by wind. The boy struck the water with a sound that still echoes in every storm. The sea swallowed him gently, like a parent forgiving a child too brave for his own good. That mattered because love must accept what pride ignores. You taste salt on your tongue, uncertain if it's ocean or grief. Daedalus flew on, not from courage, but necessity. When he landed, he built a temple for Apollo and hung his wings there, never to fly again. He whispered, for those who reach too soon. That mattered because wisdom often grows where joy once stood. You imagine the smell of burnt wax lingering in sunlight. The sea where Icarus fell was named after him, an eternal monument to enthusiasm unmeasured. Sailors still avoid that stretch of water on quiet mornings, afraid to disturb his memory. That mattered because failure becomes sacred when it teaches restraint. You can almost hear the faint hum of wings in the breeze. Artists later painted him mid-fall, never mid-flight. The tragedy overshadowed the miracle. But perhaps that's fitting. Mortals always look down when they should be looking up. That mattered because ambition frightens the grounded. You breathe, realizing both father and son were right in their own way. The sun still rises over the Icarian Sea, indifferent and beautiful. Each beam of light feels like an apology that never needed to be spoken. That mattered because eternity doesn't mourn, it remembers. You exhale, letting the image settle like warm air against your skin. And somewhere above the waves, if you listen closely, you might still hear wings beating, not in failure, but in echo. That mattered because dreams never drown, they just change altitude. You close your eyes, feeling the wind lift you for a moment, weightless and forgiven. The morning broke heavy over Tiryns, thick with the smell of iron and sacrifice. You can almost taste the air, metallic, tired, honest. Hercules rose before dawn, his body still aching from dreams that felt like bruises. The ground beneath his feet remembered every step he'd taken in penance. That mattered because guilt lingers longer than glory. He tied his lion's skin cloak, not for pride, but for protection, from memory, more than from danger. The oracle had named 12 labors, each impossible, each cleansing. The gods watched from their high seats, curious whether strength could ever redeem violence. His first task was the Nemean lion, a beast whose skin rejected blades. The fight was silent, brutal, ending in strangled breath and trembling victory. That mattered because brute force sometimes becomes poetry when it stops apologizing. You can hear the echo of struggle carried by mountain wind. He wore the lion's pelt afterward, not as trophy ordy but as confession. Its golden fur glowed faintly under sunlight, a reminder of pain conquered and absorbed. Villagers bowed when he passed, unsure if reverence or fear was appropriate. That mattered because humans still confuse suffering with sanctity. You picture him walking through dust, head bowed, uncelebrated by choice. Then came the Hydra, 9 heads hissing in black swamp water. Each one he cut returned, doubled, like regret fed by resistance. Finally, with fire and patience, he cauterized the wounds, the air smelling of blood and smoke. That mattered because persistence teaches more than triumph. You can almost feel the heat of resolve licking at your own knuckles. He wrestled stags, captured boars, cleaned stables flooded with filth, diverted rivers with his bare hands. Each task stripped him further from arrogance until humility felt like muscle memory. That mattered because labor makes saints of the stubborn. You imagine him pausing only to breathe, not to boast. When sent to fetch the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, he found compassion instead of conflict. She offered it freely. Yet rumors and fear provoked bloodshed anyway. He left the shore red-handed, her gift soaked in salt. That mattered because peace rarely survives misunderstanding. You can hear the sea murmuring disapproval. Later, he hunted the Stymphalian birds, their wings sharp as blades. He frightened them away with a rattle of bronze, the sound echoing across the lake like defiance disguised as music. That mattered because innovation often comes from exhaustion. You can almost see the feathers falling, metallic and beautiful. He captured bulls, horses, even Hades' hound. Each task more myth than memory, yet none heavier than the quiet between them. Every victory deepened his solitude. The gods stopped watching. Mortals stopped understanding. That mattered because redemption is lonelier than sin. You imagine him walking home to silence, stronger but emptier. When it was over, he didn't celebrate. He just sat beside a river and washed his hands until the water ran clear. The reflection that stared back wasn't hero or mortal. It was balance. That mattered because absolution doesn't shine, it softens. You hear the sound of running water steadying like forgiveness. Hercules died not from failure, but from fatigue. The poisoned cloak clung to him like fate made tangible. As flames consumed his mortal shell, the gods raised his spirit to Olympus. The stars glowed brighter that night out of respect or relief. That mattered because transcendence often looks like surrender. You feel heat and serenity merge into one. Mortals still whisper his name, invoking strength, misunderstanding, gentleness. They forget his story was never about might, it was about endurance. That mattered because perseverance is divine in slow motion. You can almost see his constellation, bent, burdened, still standing. And above, Hercules finally rests, his hands uncalloused, his heart unarmed. That mattered because redemption never roars, it exhales. You let the silence settle in your chest, heavy and peaceful. The fields glowed gold under a forgiving sun. You can smell ripened wheat, soft earth, the sweetness of fruit untouched. Persephone ran barefoot through it all, laughter scattering petals as she passed. Her mother, Demeter, watched from afar, proud and overprotective. That mattered because love often begins as fear disguised as care. You can almost hear the hum of bees, the warmth of eternity unbroken. Then came the crack in the world. The ground split open like an exhale withheld too long. From the depths rose Hades, cloaked in darkness, his eyes calm but hungry. He reached for her hand, gentle, deliberate, and before the fields could scream, both vanished beneath the earth. That mattered because destiny often feels polite before it devours. You feel the chill crawl up your spine. The world dimmed. Demeter wandered the earth, torch in hand, her footsteps turning forests to dust. Rivers ran dry in sympathy. Mortals starved under skies that refused to rain. That mattered because grief, when divine, redefines climate. You can almost smell smoke replacing summer. Below, Persephone woke in a kingdom of twilight. The air was cool and still, the light eternal but dim. Hades spoke softly, his voice like stone rolling downhill. Inevitable, yet gentle. He offered her a throne beside his. She refused. At first, that mattered because choice loses its meaning when absence is permanent. You hear the faint echo of chains that aren't visible. Days became months, though time there moved sideways. The dead whispered stories around her, and slowly she listened. Compassion replaced fear. The darkness wasn't cruel, it was patient. That mattered because acceptance often disguises itself as surrender. You feel the air settle warmer, her heartbeat sinking with the underworld's pulse. When Hermes came to retrieve her, she smiled faintly. "I've eaten 6 pomegranate seeds," she said, voice calm. Each one bound her to the place she had learned to pity. That mattered because belonging grows roots even in shadow. You can almost taste the fruit, sweet, bitter, inevitable. Demeter rejoiced when her daughter returned, but the earth's memory of grief remained. Flowers bloomed cautiously, aware they'd be temporary. Persephone smiled, though her eyes held winter. That mattered because joy with memory is deeper than joy without. You smell thawing soil, half warmth, half ache. Every year, she descended again, 6 months in sunlight, 6 in shadow. When she left, Demeter's sorrow withered the world. When she returned, spring followed like forgiveness. That mattered because balance was born from loss. You can almost see the cycle turning, graceful as breath. Mortals built rituals around her journey, songs for harvest, tears for frost. They didn't pray for change, only for predictability. That mattered because predictability is humanity's favorite form of mercy. You hear the rhythm of scythes, the sigh of snow melting. Hades watched her each time she left, neither pleading nor commanding. "I'll be here," he said, and he always was. That mattered because devotion, when mature, stops demanding presence. You can feel the air between them thick with affection unspoken. Persephone grew into her duality, half sunlight, half shadow, both necessary. The gods called her queen, mortals called her myth. But she was really just rhythm, proof that death and life share the same roots. That mattered because eternity needs contrast to make sense. You close your eyes, imagining her footsteps guiding the seasons forward, and so the earth breathes in her pattern still, birth, decay, return. The world sleeps and wakes by her pulse. That mattered because grief, when understood, becomes harmony. You exhale softly, letting warmth fade into cool, just as she does each year. The wind off the Aegean carried the smell of iron and salt. You can almost taste it, sharp as anticipation. Along the beaches near Troy, 1,000 fires burned, their smoke rising into a sky bored of ambition. Men sharpened swords that already knew their purpose. Gods watched from the clouds, entertained. That mattered because war begins with curiosity, not anger. You hear the clink of armor like restless rain. It started, they say, with an apple. A single fruit, golden and inscribed to the fairest, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed it. Paris, a mortal prince, was chosen to decide. Aphrodite offered love, the others offered power and victory. He chose beauty and doomed a civilization. That mattered because desire disguised as choice always feels romantic at first. You imagine the gods smiling faintly, already writing the ending. Helen left her husband, King Menelaus, and followed Paris to Troy. The city shone under the sun, its towers proud, unaware they'd become kindling for myth. Ships filled the horizon, black sails, white teeth of destiny. That mattered because beauty often summons siege. You hear the creak of oars cutting through consequence. For 10 years, blood and poetry mixed freely. Achilles raged like fire contained by pride, his armor gleaming brighter than mercy. Hector fought for family, not glory, his steps echoing through the city's dust. Even the gods took sides, Athena whispering strategy, Ares shouting chaos. That mattered because eternity loves contradiction. You smell sweat, ash, and the faint sweetness of olive oil on dying skin. When Patroclus fell, Achilles forgot strategy. His grief became hurricane, his wrath legend. The air turned black with fury. The sea itself recoiled. He killed Hector, tied the body to his chariot, and dragged it until sorrow became exhaustion. That mattered because revenge always runs out of breath. You can almost hear his sobbing disguised as thunder. The war dragged on, less for victory, more for habit. Men forgot why they fought, gods forgot why they cared. The noise became rhythm, the killing ritual. Troy's walls still stood, unbroken, patient. That mattered because endurance outperforms genius in every tragedy. You feel the fatigue seep through history's ink. Then came the horse. Beautiful, hollow, inevitable. The Trojans pulled it inside their gates, mistaking silence for peace. That night, fire replaced breath. The city screamed quietly as it burned, smoke rising in shapes that looked like regret. That mattered because deception often wears elegance. You smell cedar and grief blending into dawn. Aeneas escaped with his father on his back, walking through ruins still glowing red. He didn't look heroic, he looked tired. That mattered because survival has no posture. You see him pause to look back one last time, not for nostalgia but disbelief. Helen survived, though no one agreed how. Some say she wept, others that she smiled faintly, untouched. Either way, she became a symbol rather than a woman. That mattered because myth forgives beauty quicker than truth. You imagine her staring into smoke, trying to remember what started it all. The gods, now bored, drifted away from the battlefield. Their experiment was complete. They'd proven mortals could mimic divinities' pettiness perfectly. That mattered because imitation always flatters the cruel. You hear laughter faint and cold, fading into clouds. The sea returned to calm, washing bones clean, whispering lullabies to forgotten names. Troy was dust, but the story stayed, repeated around fires, reshaped, re-sung. That mattered because storytelling is how ruin becomes education. You feel the rhythm of oars again, carrying memory instead of soldiers. And in every retelling, pride glows faintly, golden, irresistible, waiting for the next fool to touch it. That mattered because humanity never stops auditioning for tragedy. You close your eyes, hearing the horse creak softly in the dark. The sea was restless that night, sighing against the hull like an old friend too honest to lie. Odysseus stood at the bow, salt crusting his beard, eyes heavy with both wisdom and weariness. Behind him, Troy burned faintly on the horizon. Before him, eternity disguised as ocean. That mattered because victory feels smaller at a distance. You can almost taste the salt drying on his lips. He longed for Ithaca, his island, his wife, his son grown too quickly. But the gods love to stretch patience. Poseidon stirred the sea like a painter gone mad, scattering storms across the map. Each wave was a lesson in humility. That mattered because survival rewrites ambition. You feel the deck tilt beneath your feet, heart sinking with the rhythm of waves. The first island brought temptation. Circe, half goddess, half loneliness, turned men into pigs with a glance. Odysseus resisted, barely, by remembering home. For a year he stayed anyway, lulled by her voice, by peace pretending to be rest. That mattered because comfort often imitates purpose. You can smell her herbs, sharp and sweet, like regret hidden in honey. Then came the sirens, voices smooth as silk, singing every secret he'd ever wanted to believe. He ordered his crew to plug their ears with wax and tie him to the mast. When they passed, he screamed to be freed, tears mixing with salt and sound. That mattered because truth seduces best when you can't have it. You hear faint echoes of song fading behind the waves. He met monsters too, Scylla and Charybdis, hunger and chaos in mirrored form. 6 men gone in one heartbeat. He didn't speak their names afterward. That mattered because leadership is grief with armor on. You feel the silence heavy between breaths. Calypso kept him next, her island lush, fragrant, eternal. She offered immortality, but he refused. To live forever without her, he said, is not living. That mattered because love redefines paradise. You can almost smell the ocean sighing in approval. Years passed. Ships sank, crews died, hope flickered. Yet Odysseus endured, clever as always. When storms calmed, he built rafts from wreckage, steering by stars older than regret. That mattered because intellect becomes faith when patience runs out. You see him tracing constellations with tired eyes. When he finally reached Ithaca, he arrived alone, unrecognized, his hair grey, his back bent, his voice soft. Penelope still waited, weaving lies into blankets of hope. She tested him with riddles, and he answered them like prayers. That mattered because recognition feels sacred when earned. You can feel warmth return to the room. They wept, not for loss, but for endurance. The house smelled of bread and ash, of life continuing in spite of myth. Outside, dawn rose shyly, unsure it was welcome. That mattered because even light feels awkward after absence. You breathe with them, steady, real. Odysseus sat by the hearth that night, firelight flickering on his face. "I've seen gods, monsters and ghosts," he whispered, "and none scared me as much as myself." That mattered because courage ends where honesty begins. You feel the glow soften, like memory dimming deliberately. He slept finally, without armor, without caution. His dreams smelled of sea and olive oil, his heart light as foam. That mattered because rest completes journeys better than arrival. You hear the last wave break gently against shore, and the sea, faithful as always, kept moving, its rhythm both farewell and applause. That mattered because no voyage truly ends, it just becomes quieter. You close your eyes, letting the tide rock you toward stillness. The wind in Crete carried the smell of salt and limestone, the kind of scent that clings to skin long after leaving. You can almost hear the waves slapping the cliffs below, steady as a heartbeat. In the distance stood the palace of King Minos, white stone gleaming like bone under sun. Beneath it, hidden by pride and fear, the labyrinth waited, silent, vast, alive. That mattered because secrets always demand architecture. You feel the air shift, heavy with tension unspoken. Theseus arrived by ship, young and sure of himself, his sails black as omen. He volunteered to enter the maze and kill the Minotaur, the half-man, half-beast that devoured Athenian youths each year. The city cheered him like salvation disguised as flesh. But heroes rarely understand the price of applause. That mattered because courage is often a polite name for desperation. You can see him disembarking, jaw set, eyes too calm for his age. Princess Ariadne watched him from the shadows of the portico. Her hair caught the wind like thought caught between choices. She knew the maze was no mere prison. It was her father's guilt turned inward. Still, she handed Theseus a ball of golden thread. "Follow it," she whispered, "and it will lead you back." That mattered because survival requires connection, not strength. You imagine her fingers trembling slightly as she passed him the lifeline. Inside, the air was damp, thick with the scent of earth and despair. The walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Each turn looked identical. Each silence hummed with expectation. The torchlight flickered against stone that seemed to lean inward. That mattered because fear alters geometry. You can almost hear the echo of footsteps folding in on themselves. The Minotaur's roar came from everywhere and nowhere. Theseus moved toward it slowly, not hunting but listening. When they met, the creature's eyes were not monstrous, they were tired. Its breath smelled of straw and loneliness. They fought without words, and when the beast fell, the silence felt like mourning, not victory. That mattered because killing pain never erases it. You exhaled slowly, hearing the faint rattle of breath fade into quiet. He followed the golden thread out, hand trembling against the wall. Each step backward retraced a memory. By the time he reached sunlight, he wasn't sure if he'd escaped the maze or carried it within him. That mattered because trauma doesn't dissolve, it rearranges. You imagine him blinking against brightness, his skin slick with sweat and doubt. Ariadne waited by the shore, relief glowing like dawn. They sailed away together, laughter fragile but real. Yet, halfway to Athens, he left her sleeping on Naxos, abandoned under moonlight. No reason, no farewell, just silence. That mattered because closure is rarely mutual. You can feel the cold breeze against her skin as she wakes alone. Dionysus found her there, crying into the sea. He lifted her chin gently and crowned her with stars. The wreath became a constellation, so her heartbreak would never fade entirely. That mattered because even divine pity prefers permanence. You look upward now, knowing she still glows faintly among the constellations. Theseus returned home, forgetting to change his ship's sails from black to white as promised. His father, seeing the dark sails, believed his son dead and leapt into the sea. The water turned grey that day, the Aegean forever carrying the name of grief. That mattered because mistakes make geography. You hear the faint splash of consequence blending into tide. The hero stood on the shore, victorious but hollow. His hands still smelled of stone and sorrow. Athens cheered again, unaware that he'd traded one labyrinth for another. Rule, expectation, guilt. That mattered because freedom demands new cages. You can almost hear the sound of celebration clashing with silence. The years wore him down quietly. His strength faded, his name turned to echo, and somewhere deep inside, the maze still pulsed, endless as regret. That mattered because heroism never retires, it decays. You breathe slowly, letting the darkness feel kind again. And beneath it all, the golden thread still glows faintly, winding through history's corridors, a reminder that love, not valor, leads us home. That mattered because memory itself is the only map worth keeping. You feel its weight settle softly behind your ribs. The sky that morning was pale, like parchment waiting for ink. You can almost feel its stillness, as though the world sensed something momentous preparing to arrive. Zeus sat upon his throne, temples of thunder pulsing in rhythm with thought. His head ached, not metaphorically, but literally, each flash of lightning sharper than language. That mattered because creation often begins as discomfort. You hear the low hum of divine tension. He had swallowed Metis, goddess of wisdom, long ago, fearing her prophecy that her child would surpass him. But wisdom, by nature, refuses containment. Inside his skull, she stirred, crafting ideas and blueprints, turning pain into architecture. The air thickened with potential. That mattered because thought always seeks exit. You imagine the sparks flickering behind his eyes like distant storms. The gods gathered around, nervous but fascinated. Hermes whispered suggestions. Hephaestus approached with his hammer. With one mighty strike to Zeus's brow, the air split open. From that wound emerged Athena, fully grown, armored, radiant. Her eyes gleamed, not with fire, but with comprehension. That mattered because enlightenment never crawls, it erupts. You can almost feel the vibration ripple through eternity. She stood tall, calm and whole, no blood or pain, just clarity. The thunder subsided instantly, as if the universe itself sighed in relief. Zeus blinked, both relieved and bewildered. He loved her instantly, perhaps because she came from within. That mattered because understanding often feels like reunion. You feel the calm settling after lightning. Athena looked around, assessing without judgment. She held her spear lightly, not as weapon, but extension of thought. "What is my purpose?" she asked softly. The gods had no answer, so she made her own. That mattered because wisdom defines itself. You can almost hear her voice slicing through confusion like silk. She became goddess of strategy, weaving and reason, disciplines that stitched chaos into pattern. When men fought, she guided them toward precision rather than fury. When women wove, she whispered geometry into thread. That mattered because intelligence hides in small rituals. You imagine her walking among mortals unseen, correcting symmetry with grace. Her temple rose in Athens, white marble against blue sky, an equation made visible. The air smelled of olive oil and sea spray, offerings glistening in sunlight. Inside, her statue stood serene, one hand resting on wisdom, the other on restraint. That mattered because divinity often looks like discipline. You can almost feel cool stone under your fingertips. She was not cruel, but she was not sentimental. Heroes who sought her counsel left changed but not comforted. Odysseus found cunning in her advice. Perseus found precision. She favored effort over entitlement. That mattered because fairness requires distance. You hear the quiet echo of sandals against marble as she walks away. In myths, Athena rarely sleeps. She watches from clouds, eyes sharp but merciful. When mortals argue, she waits until they tire themselves into reason. Her silence is heavier than speech. That mattered because patience is the highest form of power. You imagine her gaze softening only for comprehension. Even Ares, the god of war, bowed grudgingly to her intellect. "You win battles with thought," he said once. "I win them with blood." She replied, "Yes, and yours wash away faster." That mattered because truth cuts cleaner than steel. You can almost hear her smile, quiet and satisfied. She never married, never bore children. Her lineage was knowledge itself. Temples were her offspring, and ideas her descendants. That mattered because immortality through thought outlasts flesh. You sense her presence whenever logic steadies emotion. And every time thunder rolls, you can imagine Zeus remembering that day, the pain that birthed brilliance. That mattered because creation, divine or mortal, always costs comfort. You breathe out slowly, feeling her clarity settle over your thoughts like a calm wind through marble halls. The feast on Olympus shimmered like heat over marble. You can almost smell roasted figs and honey wine filling the air, the laughter of gods echoing like music, too perfect to be human. Golden light poured through the hall, touching polished skin, glinting off crowns of ivy. Yet, somewhere in that perfection, envy stirred, thin and patient. That mattered because peace always hides its expiration date. You feel the hum of tension beneath the harp's last note. Eris, goddess of discord, wasn't invited. She arrived anyway, unbothered, her smile curved like a blade. In her hand, a golden apple reflected every light in the room. She rolled it across the floor, and it stopped between three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. "For the fairest," the inscription read. That mattered because chaos doesn't always shout, sometimes it flirts. You can almost hear the collective inhale before pride answered. Hera offered power, kingdoms uncounted. Athena promised wisdom beyond mortality. Aphrodite said nothing. She simply smiled, her silence the loudest temptation of all. The air thickened with perfume and rivalry. Zeus, sensing danger, stepped aside. "Let a mortal decide," he said, feigning neutrality. That mattered because avoidance always dresses itself as judgment. You feel the shift of divine discomfort. The shepherd Paris was chosen, a prince disguised as simplicity. Hermes led him to the mountain where the three goddesses stood in radiance unbearable to eyes, unused to divinity. The sunlight bent around them. Each smile was strategy. That mattered because persuasion begins long before words do. You can almost smell roses and thunder sharing the same breath. Hera spoke first, her voice smooth as oil. "Choose me and you'll rule all men." Paris bowed, flattered but unsure. Athena's tone followed, sharp, crystalline. "Choose me, and none will ever outthink you." He hesitated, mind spinning with futures. Then Aphrodite stepped closer, her gaze soft, confident. "Choose me," she whispered, "and you'll have the most beautiful woman alive." That mattered because lust is the most convincing logic. You feel his heart surrender before his reason does. He handed her the apple. The decision seemed small, one hand to another, but eternity felt it shiver. Hera frowned. Athena turned away, and Aphrodite smiled like someone who had just lit a candle in a dry forest. That mattered because vanity disguised as love is still fuel. You can almost hear the first spark crackle. To make good on her promise, Aphrodite led Paris to Helen of Sparta, already wed, already legend. The sea glittered, complicit. Helen looked at him as though curiosity outweighed consequence. When she left with him, the gods smiled faintly. The rest of the world began counting ships. That mattered because seduction starts wars faster than anger ever could. You smell salt and inevitability. The wind carried rumors across the Aegean of love stolen, pride wounded, and 1,000 oaths reignited. Men polished armor that had long gathered dust. The poets sharpened their pens. That mattered because beauty becomes myth only through repetition. You can almost hear the ocean rehearsing invasion. Hera plotted vengeance. Athena plotted strategy. Aphrodite pretended innocence. Olympus divided itself quietly, alliances drawn in glances. Even the fates paused to watch, their threads twitching in curiosity. That mattered because vanity always writes good theatre. You feel the stage lights of eternity flicker. Paris and Helen stood on Troy's walls, watching the first sails appear like teeth across the horizon. He kissed her hand, unsure whether to feel blessed or doomed. She smiled faintly. "They'll remember us," she said. That mattered because legacy often confuses infamy for immortality. You can almost hear the drums faintly in the distance. And from that single choice, nations burned, heroes fell, and poets found employment for centuries, all for beauty's applause. That mattered because no empire survives aesthetics unpunished. You picture the apple gleaming still, rolling endlessly through time, waiting for another hand. Some say Eris never left the hall. She just sat quietly, watching, proud of how easily mortals and gods finish what she only needed to begin. That mattered because chaos is never the villain. It's the invitation. You exhale softly, feeling the echo of her laughter ripple through centuries. The world before Zeus's reign was loud. You can almost hear it now. Storms colliding, titans roaring, rivers changing direction out of spite. Lightning struck without witness, and mountains moved like restless beasts. It wasn't evil, just unorganized. That mattered because creation without order is noise. You smell ozone, feel the pulse of chaos beating in rhythm with curiosity. Zeus watched from above, calm amid the whirlwind. He wasn't born patient, but necessity taught him. To lead gods was to conduct contradiction, a symphony of pride, fire, and hunger. His throne of cloud wasn't comfort, it was burden made visible. That mattered because control always costs intimacy. You imagine him gripping thunder like a pen he can't put down. He divided the world among his brothers, not generosity, but pragmatism. Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld, himself the sky. Earth, as always, belonged to no one. The arrangement worked mostly because no one dared renegotiate. That mattered because order begins with fear, not fairness. You can almost see the tridents glint beneath waves that whisper compromise. The first mortals prayed to him through smoke and desperation. Their fires flickered upward, thin and hopeful. Zeus listened rarely, but when he did, he admired their persistence. "They remind me of us," he told Hera once. She only smiled, knowing persistence eventually becomes rebellion. That mattered because admiration and anxiety share the same root. You feel thunder roll like laughter trying to disguise itself. His temper was legend, swift, theatrical, often deserved. When mortals lied, he sent storms. When kings grew arrogant, he split trees and temples alike. Yet he also loved deeply, too widely, too recklessly. His affairs birthed both heroes and havoc. That mattered because creation through chaos became his favorite pattern. You can almost smell rain following confession. He learned slowly that punishment didn't restore balance, it only postponed collapse. Watching Prometheus chained, Sisyphus pushing, Tantalus thirsting, he began to understand the cruelty of his own reflection. That mattered because empathy often grows from boredom with power. You sense his lightning dim slightly with self-awareness. Olympus thrived under his rule, banquets endless, laughter thunderous, but peace is fragile when everyone wants the last word. The gods squabbled, mortals mirrored them, and Zeus found himself arbitrating eternity's pettiness. That mattered because governance is just chaos with a better costume. You imagine him sighing into clouds, pretending the noise below doesn't sound familiar. One night, he walked alone among mortals, disguised as an old man. He watched them share bread by firelight, tell stories, forgive easily. They live shorter, but sleep better, he thought. That mattered because envy wears humility better than thunder. You can smell smoke rising from small kindness. When he returned to Olympus, he didn't change the laws, but he changed his tone. His lightning struck less often, his storms grew shorter. The gods whispered, wondering if age had softened him. It hadn't, it had refined him. That mattered because restraint is the final form of power. You feel calm spreading across the sky. He still ruled with pride, but now his justice leaned toward patience. Even Hera noticed, though she never said so aloud. The other gods learned by imitation. Olympus, for a while, sounded less like argument and more like wind. That mattered because influence whispers louder than command. You hear thunder purr softly instead of roar. Zeus never forgot the taste of rebellion, how it had shaped him. When he watched mortals defy him now, he smiled faintly. "Let them," he said. "It's how gods begin." That mattered because legacy is just disobedience properly aged. You sense the sky brightening as approval. And in that moment, the world found balance, not perfection, just rhythm. Chaos didn't vanish. It learned manners. That mattered because peace isn't the absence of storm. It's the decision to dance through it. You breathe slowly, feeling thunder roll far away, no longer warning, just heartbeat. The night smelled of iron and prophecy. You can almost feel the damp air clinging to his skin as Perseus stood on the cliff's edge, waves breaking below like applause withheld. The stars above were sharp and cold, ancient spectators to human audacity. He was young, uncertain, yet determined to carry out what gods rarely attempt, mercy through precision. That mattered because courage is often just fear rehearsed. You hear the sea whisper. Remember her face, but not directly. He had been born from a locked tower, a secret carried by rain. His mother, Danae, kept him hidden until fate grew restless. King Polydectes demanded a gift worthy of arrogance, a Gorgon's head. Perseus accepted before realizing it was a death sentence. That mattered because impulsive promises build better myths. You can almost see the flicker of doubt masked by pride. Hermes lent him wings, Athena gave him a mirrored shield, and Hades, perhaps out of boredom, offered a cap of invisibility. "Don't look directly," Athena warned. "Reflection is the safest truth." That mattered because perspective has always been the gentlest weapon. You feel the air cool around his shoulders as the gifts hum with quiet divinity. He crossed oceans, silent but not alone. The stars guided him, though even they blinked nervously when he approached the land of stone. The ground there was littered with shapes mid-scream: soldiers, beasts, pride. Each statue shimmered faintly in moonlight, still beautiful in defeat. That mattered because tragedy preserves elegance too well. You can almost hear echoes of warnings left unfinished. Medusa slept among ruins of her own making. Her serpents hissed softly, dreaming with her. The moonlight traced her features, no longer monstrous, just misunderstood. Perseus hesitated, his breath catching. "Forgive me," he whispered, voice shaking with something heavier than fear. That mattered because empathy complicates victory. You feel his heart beat slow, deliberate. He turned his shield toward her, seeing her reflection shimmer, eyes closed, serene. With one stroke, he ended her isolation. Silence followed absolute. Then from her blood sprang Pegasus, wings wide as redemption. That mattered because beauty often emerges from cruelty's leftovers. You imagine feathers catching first light. Perseus carried her head in a sack, careful not to meet her gaze even now. Along his return, he used it only once, to save, not destroy, turning a tyrant to stone before setting his mother free. That mattered because power redeemed through restraint becomes wisdom. You can almost hear the whisper of stone settling into silence. When he presented the head to Athena, she set it on her shield, her expression unreadable. "She was always mine," the goddess said quietly. That mattered because ownership is how gods disguise remorse. You see the faint shimmer of serpents, still alive in metal. Perseus lived long, revered but restless. At night, he sometimes dreamed of eyes, tired, golden, forgiving. The wind that passed through his window hissed softly, not in anger, but in memory. That mattered because consequence lingers longer than guilt. You breathe in the faint scent of rain through open stone. When he died, Zeus placed him among the stars, sword still raised, eternally mid-action. Even now, his constellation leans forward, never resting, forever decisive. That mattered because heroes don't stop, they're just suspended. You look up, seeing him etched faintly against the dark. Medusa's story faded into cautionary tale, his became triumph. Yet both shared the same truth. Reflection saves, directness destroys. That mattered because perspective is survival. You feel the echo of that rule ripple quietly through your thoughts. And somewhere, deep beneath time, the stone garden still stands, lit only by memory, silent witnesses to the day. Pity looked away. That mattered because every victory leaves a shadow in its wake. You close your eyes, hearing her name whisper once more through the wind. The city of Thebes shimmered in the heat, the scent of dust and desperation hanging in the air. You can almost feel the dryness on your tongue, the heaviness of prophecy pressing down. Oedipus walked among his people, loved and admired, a king who solved riddles, not realizing he was one. That mattered because brilliance often walks blind into irony. You hear the distant cry of a raven, a sound older than warning. He had once faced the Sphinx, whose voice purred like sandpaper and wine. "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 at night?" she asked. He answered, "Man," without hesitation, and she fell silent forever. The city hailed him as savior. That mattered because intelligence wins applause before it earns understanding. You can almost see the monster's shadow still trembling behind victory. He married Jocasta, the widowed queen, beautiful, kind, and unknowingly his mother. Their reign was peaceful at first, their love genuine. But fate, when delayed, collects interest. That mattered because happiness that ignores prophecy is just intermission. You feel the air in Thebes grow heavy, ripe with revelation. A plague struck, crops withered, and oracles whispered that the city rotted from hidden sin. Oedipus vowed to find the culprit, confident as logic itself. Each clue pointed closer to him, though he refused to read the handwriting of destiny. That mattered because denial is intelligence's favorite addiction. You can hear the footsteps quicken through marble corridors. When the truth surfaced, it came not as thunder, but as echo. Jocasta realized first. Her scream folded the air, a sound too full to name. Oedipus followed the thread of his own investigation straight into horror. He found her lifeless, her body still warm with disbelief. That mattered because knowledge rarely arrives gently. You feel the world tilt in silence. He took her brooch and blinded himself. 2 eyes traded for understanding. Blood ran down his face, dark and slow, like melted ink. "Now I see," he murmured. The crowd didn't speak. They bowed, not out of pity, but reverence. That mattered because wisdom without vision terrifies. You can almost hear the faint drip of consequence hitting stone. He wandered from Thebes, guided only by intuition and regret. Each step felt both punishment and purification. The air smelled of earth after rain, a world cleansed of comfort. That mattered because exile always starts from within. You imagine his hand trailing along rough stone, tracing invisible patterns. Years passed. Travelers spoke of a blind man on lonely roads, his voice calm, his presence unsettling. He offered advice to those who would listen, each sentence heavy with invisible scars. That mattered because enlightenment doesn't teach, it haunts. You can almost hear him whisper, "Truth is sharp only once." He found peace, finally, in the forest of Colonus. The trees there swayed as if bowing. He felt the ground beneath him tremble, a sign from the gods. The earth opened softly, not in wrath, but welcome. That mattered because acceptance is nature's apology. You feel the breeze warm and forgiving. When his daughter Antigone called his name, he smiled. "Don't mourn," he said. "Every blindness sees something." Then he vanished, no thunder, no spectacle, just absence folding neatly. That mattered because resolution rarely performs. You can almost hear the forest sigh. Thebes continued, forever aware that knowing too much costs everything. Poets wrote his story as tragedy, but perhaps it was relief. Ignorance had always been the true curse. That mattered because awareness demands sacrifice. You breathe slower, understanding how mercy can feel like darkness. And somewhere, along an ancient road, the echo of his cane still taps softly, steady, rhythmic, unhurried. That mattered because enlightenment never rushes, it waits. You close your eyes, hearing his footsteps fade into the quiet hum of comprehension. The air smelled of wax and salt that morning. You can almost feel the warmth rising from the sea below, heavy and still. Daedalus adjusted the wings strapped to his son's back, fingers trembling not from age, but from the kind of fear only fathers understand. "Not too high," he warned softly, "and not too low." Icarus nodded, his smile wide and untested. That mattered because obedience rarely survives excitement. You hear the faint rustle of feathers whispering impatience. They had built their escape from exile with patience measured in feathers and hope. The labyrinth behind them still hummed faintly, as though missing its prisoners. The sun climbed higher, curious. Daedalus launched first, steady, cautious, each wing beat a calculation. Icarus followed, laughing. The sound of youth carried farther than the sound of reason. That mattered because joy flies faster than warnings. You see the shimmer of light dancing on their shadows. At first, it worked. The sky opened like forgiveness, and the wind welcomed them like an old friend pretending not to worry. They soared past clouds, heavy with silence, the ocean below shrinking into indifference. For the first time, freedom felt like fact. That mattered because success blinds faster than sunlight. You feel the air thin, cool, and intoxicating. Daedalus called out, his voice trembling in wind. "Lower, my son." But Icarus had never heard applause before. He chased warmth the way humans chase clarity, too close, too soon. The wax softened, the feathers sighed, the air changed its tone. That mattered because every ascent rehearses its fall. You can almost hear the wax drip, like tears ignoring gravity. He fell beautifully. The sea caught him not as punishment, but as inevitability. The feathers scattered like snow on blue glass. The sky stayed silent, polite in its indifference. Daedalus circled once, heartbroken but unsurprised. That mattered, because love doesn't erase consequence. It only narrates it gently. You see the ripples expanding, each one repeating the same soft apology. The world called it tragedy. The gods called it pattern. No one blamed the sun. It was just doing its job. That mattered because nature never promises fairness. You smell salt, sharp and endless. Daedalus landed alone, his feet sinking into wet sand. He looked upward, seeing nothing but light. His hands still smelled of wax. "He flew," he whispered, "and that's what matters." That mattered because regret and pride share the same heartbeat. You feel warmth brush your cheek, like memory pretending to be wind. In later centuries, painters softened his fall into metaphor, his body tiny, the sea indifferent, farmers still plowed nearby, the world unmoved. That mattered because myth is mercy for failure. You can almost hear the brushstrokes sigh. Poets argued whether he died foolish or free, perhaps both. The truth, as usual, lives in the middle distance, where ambition and serenity overlap. That mattered because contradiction keeps memory alive. You feel the faint hum of wings behind your thoughts. The sea where he fell was renamed in his honor, as though grief needed geography. The Icarian Sea still whispers his name on calm days, when the wind remembers youth. That mattered because immortality begins with repetition. You hear the faint echo of his laughter rising through centuries. Daedalus grew old but never stopped building. His inventions grew smaller, quieter, machines that never sought the sky again. That mattered because wisdom scales down after loss. You can almost see him shaping simplicity with reverence. And somewhere, perhaps beyond the horizon, Icarus still flies, not upward, but endlessly forward, where warmth no longer burns. That mattered because some lessons are too beautiful to regret. You close your eyes, feeling sunlight rest, not sear, against your skin. The mountain wind cuts sharp against skin, dry and metallic. You can almost taste the iron in the air. Far below, the world glowed faintly with fire, tiny sparks flickering in human hands. Prometheus watched, chained to stone, his ribs lifting like sighs between agony and pride. Each sunrise felt identical, each sunset a small relief. That mattered because defiance ages slower than pain. You hear the faint crackle of flame carried by memory. He had stolen it, the divine spark, fire from Olympus, hidden in a fennel stalk. He gave it freely to mortals, who trembled first, then laughed, then cooked. They learned warmth, craft, rebellion. Zeus called it betrayal. Prometheus called it generosity. That mattered because language always picks a side. You can almost smell smoke rising from the first hearths. The punishment was exact, eternal torment by repetition. Each morning, an eagle tore at his liver. Each night, it grew back. Pain without death, hope without escape. The gods believed they'd invented despair. That mattered because cruelty mistakes consistency for justice. You feel the chill of altitude pressing against compassion. Yet Prometheus never screamed, not loudly anyway. His silence mocked Olympus louder than words. He knew that every fire burning below was his victory. The gods could chain him, but not the idea. That mattered because punishment loses power when belief survives. You can almost see the glint of satisfaction behind his exhaustion. Mortals built cities, they forged metal, baked clay, and whispered his name in gratitude and fear. His myth spread like the very flame he gifted, unstoppable. Zeus watched with quiet frustration, realizing control doesn't extinguish inspiration. That mattered because rebellion replicates faster than obedience. You hear the hum of civilization forming. One day Heracles climbed the mountain, breaking chains older than remorse. The eagle fled. Prometheus stood slowly, skin marked by centuries of purpose. "You took long enough," he said, half smiling. That mattered because endurance eventually feels like mentorship. You can feel the air warm again as freedom exhales. He didn't return to Olympus. Instead, he walked among mortals, hiding in plain sight. In every craftsman's forge, every poet's spark, every scientist's spark of madness, he lingered. That mattered because divinity prefers anonymity when its work succeeds. You smell the faint sweetness of smoke trailing through progress. Zeus forgave him eventually, or maybe just accepted futility. The sky grew quieter, thunder more selective. The gods had learned to share. That mattered because peace sometimes begins with exhaustion. You hear the crackle of controlled fire, no longer threat, just rhythm. Prometheus looked upon humanity and saw both promise and repetition. They burned forests, built empires, and repeated his mistake, confusing mastery for meaning. He smiled, knowing cycles were inevitable. That mattered because irony keeps immortals entertained. You can almost feel his laughter vibrating through history. At night, he sat by campfires, unnoticed, listening to stories about himself, each retelling softer, kinder. He preferred it that way. That mattered because myths, too, need to rest. You feel the glow of fire warming your hands. When dawn came, he vanished into smoke, carried upward, but leaving warmth behind. The mountains sighed, the chains rusted quietly, the sky stayed mercifully still. That mattered because redemption rarely announces itself. You smell morning, clean and calm. And even now, when you strike a match or light a candle, a faint whisper hums through the flame, not of rebellion, but of endurance. That mattered because the gift still burns exactly as he meant it to. quietly, eternally, defiantly alive. You close your eyes, hearing fire breathe softly, patient as sleep. The air on Olympus is thinner now. You can almost feel it, cool and silver, brushing softly across your skin. The gods no longer argue here. Their laughter drifts like dust through columns of marble and mist. The sun moves slower, the clouds whisper more. Somewhere, a lyre still plays, not for audience, but habit. That matters because even eternity needs background music. You breathe deeper, hearing echoes fade before they finish. Zeus sits quietly, thunder asleep beside him. His hands, once restless, now rest open. Hera moves like wind between pillars, no longer jealous, just aware. Athena writes in silence, her ink the color of shadow. Poseidon hums softly below, the ocean his only listener. That matters because power becomes kindness when it forgets to prove itself. You can almost smell the faint trace of ozone and olive oil lingering in air. Even Dionysus, who once danced till dawn, now watches the sunrise with gentle indifference. The wine is sweeter, the laughter lower, the gestures slower. The world below continues, but Olympus has learned stillness. That matters because immortality eventually discovers boredom's wisdom. You feel the calm stretch, like silk, between thoughts. Hestia keeps the hearth lit, flame steady, patient. Its glow reflects in the eyes of every god who passes, reminding them that warmth is older than worship. No one kneels anymore, they simply share quiet. That matters because reverence matures into recognition. You can almost hear the crackle of flames sinking with your breath. Hermes paces the clouds, but even he has slowed. Messages can wait now. Mortals, he knows, have learned to tell their own stories. He smiles faintly, pockets full of echoes. That matters because purpose fulfilled becomes peace. You feel the wind touch your cheek like reassurance. Aphrodite still hums when she walks, her song softer now, more memory than melody. Love has aged, but beautifully. She doesn't stir chaos anymore, she blesses silence instead. That matters because tenderness is just passion after it rests. You can almost taste the sweetness of fruit ripened by patience. In this quiet Olympus, time folds differently. Days don't pass, they dissolve. There is no thunder, no prayer, only the faint sound of marble sighing under sunlight. That matters because stillness, too, is divine. You feel your shoulders loosen, every thought becoming lighter. Below, mortals dream of them still, and the gods smile faintly, unseen. Myths have become lullabies now, stories mothers tell to soothe, not to warn. That matters because memory softens everything eventually. You hear the lull of wind through pines echo distant prayers. The air smells faintly of ambrosia, sweet, floral, nostalgic. You imagine it resting on your tongue, melting like the last note of a song. That matters because pleasure, when small, lasts longer. You breathe it in, feeling your chest warm slightly. Zeus watches lightning flash faintly across distant clouds. He doesn't summon it, he just observes. Even power, it seems, enjoys the view. That matters because restraint is divine leisure. You feel the rumble far away, comforting rather than warning. The gods, once loud and impulsive, now exist like weather, present but gentle, distant but nurturing. Olympus isn't gone, it's just asleep. That matters because silence is what follows completion. You hear only wind and the faint clink of goblets somewhere in the haze. And as the last ember fades behind marble halls, you realize this isn't the end of their reign, just their exhale. That matters because endings rarely close. They rest. You close your eyes, hearing immortality breathe. You stand before a river that doesn't move, yet flows. The water is silver, clear, but heavy, carrying reflections that forget to return. You can almost smell it, sweet and cold, like rain that fell on ancient marble. This is Lethe, the river of forgetting, where souls come to release themselves. That matters because even memory tires. You hear the faint murmur of voices dissolving into peace. The air hums softly, neither warm nor cool. Each droplet carries whispers, names, regrets, laughter, all blending until indistinguishable. A soul bends to drink, and the world inside them blurs into stillness. No pain, no pride, no purpose, just soft erasure. That matters because peace sometimes means subtraction. You can almost taste the water on your tongue, weightless and infinite. Along the shore, reeds sway without rhythm. They know every story, every confession ever spoken here, yet they judge none. Wind moves through them like sighs. That matters because forgiveness prefers repetition to explanation. You feel the breeze brush against your palms. Some souls resist at first, clutching their memories like relics. The river waits, patient. It doesn't force, it invites. Eventually, they surrender, not in defeat, but relief. The surface ripples once, then closes. That matters because healing begins with permission. You hear the faint plink of water folding over itself. The gods rarely visit this place. Even Hermes, who guides the dead, lingers at the edge, respectful. The water doesn't need witnesses. It does its work quietly. That matters because divinity respects efficiency. You sense the calm stretch outward, endless. The river reflects no sky. It looks inward, showing nothing but possibility. When you stare long enough, your reflection blinks back as someone new, or no one at all. That matters because identity is just memory rehearsed. You can almost feel your edges soften. A faint scent of myrrh drifts from nowhere, familiar but unplaceable. Perhaps the gods still bless this place in secret. Or perhaps forgetting is its own prayer. That matters because devotion doesn't always require direction. You inhale slowly, the scent wrapping around thought. You notice how quiet it is. No birds, no footsteps, just the rhythm of dissolving sound. Each silence feels like an answer. That matters because resolution is quieter than revelation. You feel your heartbeat slow to match the current. If you reach down, your fingers disappear beneath the surface, not wet, not dry, just gone. For a moment, you understand everything and nothing at once. That matters because comprehension and oblivion are siblings. You exhale, letting the thought drift away. Somewhere downstream, a ripple touches another shore where rebirth waits patiently. Souls will drink, forget, return to life lighter. The cycle continues without instruction. That matters because eternity thrives on autopilot. You hear water folding into itself endlessly. The air shimmers faintly, silver dust dancing in no wind. You can't tell whether it's mist or memory. It doesn't matter anymore. That matters because peace doesn't care for precision. You feel yourself leaning closer. When you finally touch the water, it feels like exhaling. Your worries flatten. Your name softens. The world hushes. That matters because sleep is the mortal version of Lethe. You close your eyes, and everything, time, myth, thought, flows gently into quiet. beneath the crust of the world, deeper than even memory. The Titan's dream. You can almost hear it, a low hum vibrating through the bones of mountains, through the roots of forests. Their sleep is not peaceful, but vast. The earth shifts slightly, like a blanket adjusting itself around giants. That matters because eternity, too, needs rest. You feel the tremor of patience hidden under stone. Cronus lies still, his breath a slow storm that takes centuries to complete. Once he devoured his children to avoid his fate. Now he dreams of their laughter, unthreatened. His golden sickle rusts quietly beside him, half buried in myth. That matters because fear eventually becomes nostalgia. You can almost smell the metallic sweetness of time itself decaying into calm. Rhea murmurs in her sleep, her voice blending with rivers. She once screamed during births that rewrote heaven, but now her lips part only to whisper lullabies no one remembers. The water listens, repeating her melodies to shorelines. That matters because motherhood never stops, even in silence. You hear the rhythm of waves slow into breathing. Atlas still holds the heavens, though now they weigh nothing. The stars drift gently, their light no longer demanding. His shoulders have grown accustomed to infinity. Sometimes he smiles in dreams, imagining the sky resting itself. That matters because burden, when accepted fully, becomes balance. You feel the weight leave your chest. Oceanus curls around the edges of the world, his form indistinguishable from sea. He dreams of coral cities and calm tides. The fish that glide through him never know he's awake beneath them. That matters because guardianship thrives in anonymity. You sense the cool salt of patience touch your lips. Hyperion's light dims softly, his golden fire now candle-like, steady and tender. His glow filters through the soil, warming seeds instead of skies. Even radiance needs shadows to understand itself. That matters because brilliance learns gentleness through exhaustion. You can almost feel warmth rise beneath your skin. The Titan's dreams mingle, overlapping like overlapping clouds. Some hum with memory, others with regret. Together they form the subterranean heartbeat of the world. That matters because history doesn't die, it hibernates. You hear it now, faint but endless, steady as breathing. Above them, humanity continues unaware, walking upon their chests, building cities upon their ribs. The Titans don't mind, they always preferred quiet admiration to prayer. That matters because reverence disguised as ignorance is still devotion. You feel the stillness expand, protective. Sometimes thunder stirs them slightly, or an earthquake rolls like a sigh, but they never wake. They simply adjust, stretching eternity's limbs. The tremors you feel beneath your feet aren't warnings, they're adjustments. That matters because the planet's restlessness is just dreaming too loudly. You can almost hear it settle back into slumber. Each Titan dreams of what they lost, dominion, power, attention, and wakes, briefly, to realize they haven't lost anything that mattered. That understanding alone rocks them back to sleep. That matters because peace often follows irrelevance. You sense the air grow heavier, more forgiving. Night thickens like velvet. Stars above flicker in rhythm with their breathing below. The universe synchronizes itself in sleep. That matters because harmony was always nature's bedtime story. You breathe slower, feeling your pulse match the cosmos. And in that harmony, the Titans fade, not gone, not dead, just quieter. Their dreams fill the spaces between wind and water, between thought and rest. That matters because silence is the truest inheritance. You let the hum of their dreaming carry you closer to stillness. There is no sunrise in Elysium, only glow. You can almost see it now, a field of soft gold grass, moving without wind, light bending gently in circles. The air smells like honey and clean linen, the kind of sweetness that never grows heavy. This is the place where souls come not to forget, but to remember gently. That matters because paradise is recollection without pain. You breathe in slowly, as if tasting calm itself. The rivers here run silent, their water warm as breath. The souls who walk along them don't speak much. Words are unnecessary when nothing requires explanation. They move in rhythm, their footsteps inaudible but synchronized. That matters because peace removes the need for narration. You can almost feel the temperature of timelessness, neither warm nor cool, just kind. There is music here, faint and endless. It comes from nowhere and everywhere, soft enough that silence still wins. Harps hum from memory, voices rise like mist. You might recognize some of them, heroes, poets, ordinary lives now equally luminous. That matters because equality, finally, has no audience. You feel the sound weave into your heartbeat. The fields glow brighter as you walk, each step releasing small motes of light that hover before fading. They don't burn or vanish, they simply stop needing to be seen. That matters because fulfillment is disappearance done gracefully. You can almost see them drifting upward like sighs. Somewhere in the distance stands a grove of olive trees. Their leaves glimmer silver gold, whispering secrets of peace that even the gods envy. Under one of them, Odysseus might be resting. Or maybe it's someone you once knew, smiling faintly, content. That matters because reunion doesn't need recognition. You feel the ache of longing dissolve softly. There are no temples here, no altars, no commands. The divine has retired its hierarchy. Every breath is sacred enough. The grass sways, the river hums, and time nods approvingly. That matters because holiness was always just awareness. You can almost hear eternity exhale. Even the gods visit sometimes, not as rulers, but as wanderers. They walk barefoot through the fields, touching the grass, remembering how it felt to be mortal. Zeus leaves his thunder behind. Athena removes her helm. They smile quietly at one another. That matters because humility completes the circle of power. You see the light bend softly around them. A breeze moves through the plain, carrying whispers of laughter, half dreamed and half remembered. Maybe they're yours. Maybe everyone's. It doesn't matter. The sound feels familiar, like childhood never fully gone. That matters because nostalgia is paradise translated. You let it brush gently against your skin. The sun never sets, but shadows still exist, soft, lilac, kind. They remind you that contrast is part of comfort. The souls walk through them without hesitation. That matters because perfection without imperfection would be unbearable. You feel gratitude settle inside you like warmth through fabric. You sit now, though you don't recall deciding to. The grass leans around you, making room. The air hums. For a moment, the boundary between dream and reality softens, and you forget which side you started from. That matters because peace doesn't care for geography. You exhale slowly, your breath mingling with eternity. The river glows brighter, its surface now mirroring stars from somewhere beyond. You lean forward and see your reflection, calm, smiling, already fading into light. That matters because closure is just clarity without emotion. You blink, and even that image dissolves. And then, at last, everything falls quiet. The fields, the river, the sky, all breathing together, all asleep. You lie back, eyes open but heavy. The world curls itself around you, whispering one final truth. Nothing ever ended. It simply rested. That matters because rest was always the real immortality. You close your eyes, and Elysium keeps dreaming for you. You've come a long way. From the hollow breath of chaos to the quiet glow of Elysium, you've wandered through fire, thunder, prophecy, and sea. You've watched gods rise and rest, mortals stumble and forgive, light unfold from darkness again and again. And now everything feels still, not ended, just still. That matters because stories, like stars, don't die. They cool into memory. You feel the warmth fade gently against your chest. If you listen now, really listen, you'll hear how softly the world hums when it's finished speaking. The ocean still breathes beneath Olympus. The wind still carries whispers from the Titans' sleep. Even the smallest ember from Prometheus's fire flickers somewhere, perhaps in a candle, perhaps in you. That matters because divinity never truly leaves. It just changes address. You breathe in, slow and quiet, like the sky forgiving itself. You realize it wasn't chaos or Zeus or destiny that shaped the world. It was the pause between them, the hesitation before creation, the silence between thunderclaps, the heartbeat between fear and awe. Every myth you heard tonight began there, in that sacred hesitation. That matters because peace doesn't come after noise. It hides inside it. You exhale, and the air feels weightless. The gods are asleep now. Olympus glows faintly above, not as a kingdom, but as an idea. Their stories drift through your mind like slow-moving clouds, blurring the line between dream and history. You can almost see Athena's light flicker in the dark, or feel the distant warmth of Icarus's sun. They're not gone, they're just quieter now. That matters because endings are simply stories learning how to rest. You blink slowly, eyes heavy but calm. Somewhere beyond you, the stars fold themselves inward. The constellations, Perseus, Orion, Cassiopeia, shift gently, arranging themselves for someone else's tomorrow. You are small beneath them, but never insignificant. Every myth that ever existed began with a single mortal looking up. That matters because wonder is inheritance. You feel your pulse slow to match the rhythm of the universe. The night exhales. The stories fade. What remains isn't lesson or warning. It's stillness. The kind that feels earned, not given. You can almost taste it, warm and silent, like honey melting into sleep. That matters because comprehension always ends in quiet. So rest now, traveler. You've walked through gods and ghosts and light itself. You've seen the rise of Olympus, the fall of pride, the rebirth of hope. And now, at last, you arrive at what they were all chasing, peace. That matters because this, right here, is the destination of every myth. You close your eyes, the air around you hums once more, soft, infinite, kind. The universe pulls a blanket of night across your shoulders. The old voices fade completely. The world sighs. Sleep now. The myths will remember you kindly.